Yes, we.
Testing. Tom, am I on? Okay. Okay? Yep. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We have with us today Deacon Dave Behling from Reconciling Works. Just a little bit about what he says about himself online is that he's a homemaker, a writer, a college professor, an academic administrator, and more recently, a synod staff member and a campus minister. We are lucky to have him here today to talk about Reconciling Works and RIC. I'm Rob Thomas. I'm the lead of First United's Reconciling in Christ task team. We started our work about in the summer of last year, and he was the first person I called. Reconciling Works, he'll tell you a lot about it, but it is affiliated with ELCA, not directly, but as a strong resource in order to have education, structure, and guidance on topics of inclusion and including the LGBTQIA+ community. We're very indebted to his guidance so far, and we still have more parts of our journey to continue. So, welcome. Thank you for being here, and anxious to see what you put together for us.
Thank you for letting me be here, for inviting me. And as a good deacon and a wannabe Vulcan, I come to serve. Anyone know how to respond? Nope. But thanks for playing. The next time a Vulcan comes and does that, you can say, your service honors us. All right, so I do have a few paper handout versions of the presentation. Not enough for everyone who's here, but if you would like to have one to take away with some of the information on the slides, and perhaps to see the ones I'm skipping for interests of time, they're just sitting up here in the front. I have another one too that you could do at some point in a different workshop. But Reconciling Works, Reconciling Christ, that's why I'm here. Who is Reconciling Works? We are a national nonprofit, faith-based Lutheran. We were created in 1974. The original name of the organization was Lutherans Concerned, and it was based out of Chicago. If this queer kid starting middle school in 1974 had known that there were Lutherans who actually believed that people like me belonged in the church, that would have been an amazing revelation. Sadly, I did not learn about the organization until late in the 90s. The Reconciling in Christ program has existed in some form or another since 1983. The version that we now follow, the toolkit that we use, is the product of lots of experimentation, but also consultation with ecumenical partners. And they're all listed in the booklet You can download it for free if you want to see all the different ecumenical partners who helped. All who use this same toolkit, the same journey that you have been that has been underway here, with different outcomes, because we all have different expectations at the end. So, we are a partner of the ELCA, but we are not of the ELCA, which means they don't pay any of our salaries, and they don't give us any money. Every so often, they'll give us a grant, but that's pretty rare. So we are dependent on the donations of individual and churches who support us financially. And part of our work is in partnership with the ELCA, and they recognize us as such. And our executive director is often at ELCA Church Council and Conference of Bishops meetings because of that special relationship. Our values are that God embraces and values all of us, individually, collectively, as beloved children of God. The Spirit gives a diversity of gifts for the benefit of all. And Jesus calls us to work for justice here in this world right now. What are we doing today? We're going to learn more about what this ministry is about, learn a little bit more about the journey. Some of you know a lot about it already. Some of you it might help to refresh your memory about all the different steps and where you are on that journey, and identify a few resources for supporting you as you finish that journey, but also as you get to step 11, which is the one where you continue to live into your RIC identity as long as this congregation continues to be a part of the ELCA, and which we hope is a good long time, another 100 years maybe. The ground rules. We aren't going to be doing a lot of interaction, but when we get to the Q&A part especially, remember to put people over definitions. Labels matter. They're not irrelevant. The fact that I am a B on that LGBTQIA+ acronym, that means something, but that's not all of me. That's just one part of me. So all these labels and definitions, neurodiverse, disabled, abled, those are sometimes important, but that's not. It's about people and relationships. So we will practice hospitable curiosity when we ask questions. So before you ask a question, whoever you're talking to, do you want anyone to ask you that question? Because if you don't want to be asked that question, then don't ask it from them either. That might tell you your curiosity is maybe a little too far into lurid or just curiosity for curiosity's sake. Practice self-care. This is one of the things we like the core team itself, the task team here, to practice, to be mindful of how you're doing as you go through this journey, when things feel like a burden and you need to be supported, and when you're feeling brave and are able to step into things. But practice self-care, know your boundaries. Remember that this is just a piece of the work to make this world a better place for everyone. It's not all of it. There's still much to do. You're not done when you become RIC. And then have an open mind and open heart, which is always good for Christians in everything we do. We'll skip this one. Demographic change. So what we're going to do for the next few slides is why this work matters, why it's important to do this work. One of those reasons is demographic change. A number of you last night when we had supper had already noticed that younger people, as you get into these generations, well, they're more comfortable self-identifying because it's safer. Nothing's changed about. One person asked, so is it something in the water that there are more LGBT people now? It's like, no. We've always been around. We've always existed. It's just it hasn't always felt safe. And so if we want to be a church that authentically welcomes and embraces people who are younger, especially, then being open and affirming when it comes to different sexualities and different ways of understanding gender can be part of that puzzle. It's not a guarantee that young people will suddenly start flocking here, but it could help. It could help. And if you look at, if you come and get this, or if you look this up on the Gallup website, which is where the data comes from, you'll see that the percentage goes up with each generation. So another reason this work matters is because of conversion therapy, something I was afraid of when I was growing up, that my mom or the church elders would decide, oh, we need to send him off to one of those camps where they pray it away. But there are some states, Minnesota is one that is now considered a sanctuary state when it comes to a lot of things, trans people included. Wisconsin, it's not banned, and the legislature and the governor have been in disagreement about how to do that. The legislature has tried to make it impossible to ban conversion therapy, but it is a possibility in the state that some youth could be sent off against their will to something like that. Conversion therapy doesn't work, by the way. It's brainwashing is what it is. And even the psychology community itself has recognized that, including people who used to be involved in this work. They have confessed that what we were doing was brainwashing kids, and it caused harm. Bans on the best practice medical care. This map is actually a little out of date because some states have gotten really aggressive. And with the latest executive orders, the attempt to ban this best practice medical care everywhere in the United States, I don't know that is in force at this point because there's been so many different chaotic actions happening. But just know that in Wisconsin, it doesn't have a ban on best practice medical care. And so it's still possible to get it here. Unfortunately, some hospitals, the ones specifically in the Roman Catholic system, no longer offer it. And so you would have to go to one of the others if your community is served by a Roman Catholic medical institution. That's a choice that denomination has made, unfortunately. So that is another reason. This isn't specifically inside a church, but we are part of a nation. We are part of a political community as well, and the things we do ripple out in ways that can be helpful, especially for families with trans kids. The Canadian Church, for example, the ELCIC, is actively working with congregations in case American families come across the border seeking refuge and care for their kids, sometimes even adults, if states ban that as well. Safe schools laws is another reason. Some states have begun to make it more difficult to include bullying for someone's perceived sexuality or gender. Those two states in orange. I don't know if this will be a trend or if in other states schools can still include that on the list of bullying. Now, bullying is, I think we all know what bullying is. I don't need to go into it anymore. Now, that was all social and political stuff. Now we're into why this work matters as part of the ELCA. The ELCA has more than once indicated that justice and equality for LGBT and men and women, sexism is a sin, homophobia is a sin, racism is a sin. And so as a partner of the ELCA, the work we do helps the church live into that in its congregational expression and in its synodical expression as well. We're not doing that today, but we have a workshop that we do that's all about the basics, an introduction to sexuality, a gender-oriented expression, and gender identity. What are pronouns? Why are pronouns important? What is it when we say someone is ace arrow? What does that mean? There's a lot of basic language and concepts that we can understand better. And so part of our work is because of this ELCA commitment. But we also do this work because of this, which often clergy know about and lay people do not. In 2008, there was a church-wide assembly that endorsed the ordination of LGBT people for the first time. It joined other denominations. Methodists just did it last year. Presbyterians had done it. Reformed had done it. The UCC had done it earlier. But in that decision, there was a compromise. And so It's sort of big enough to see on the screen. The church I grew up in, for example, it was an ALC and is now an ELCA congregation. That was their position. I don't know if it's their position now. I don't know very much about the church I grew up in. I haven't been back there for years and years. But that homosexuality is a sin, basically, and the only thing you can do if you really can't pray it away is live in celibacy. That's the only option you have, which is not what Paul talks about with celibacy. Celibacy is a gift for Paul. The way the church uses celibacy, it's a punishment. If you can't learn to love in the way that we consider normal, then I'm sorry, you're just not allowed to love other people in a way that is intimate. So, but an ELCA congregation can have any of those four. And so someone who goes to an ELCA congregation, unless you're RIC, may encounter that. They may go to a church thinking, oh, this ELCA, they're very, they're pretty woke as a denomination. It's like, it's going to be a great place for us to be as a same-sex couple. And then they'll go in and like, oh, maybe not. And so because of congregational autonomy, this compromise, the bound conscience situation, it really is important that congregations make the commitment and do it publicly, because otherwise people aren't going to know. They aren't going to know. This whole bound conscience, these four positions, will be up for possible amendment, changes in the Churchwide Assembly of 2028. So if any of you are on that list to go to Churchwide Assembly in 2025 or in 2028, just be aware that some important things in relation to the LGBTQIA+ community are going to be on the agenda. We'll move on. So the Reconciling Christ journey. So that was why this work matters. Now we're on to the journey itself. It's about outreach and education, which is what I'm doing today. It's about building relationships, though, the small text there. It's about making, by the end of the journey, the hope is the congregation will not just be welcoming, open, and affirming, but they will also be stronger and understand and know each other better as a community. Because you will have spent all this time listening to each other, getting to know each other, spending time with each other, talking about uncomfortable things together and getting through it, is that the whole community will be stronger and more, deeply connected to each other. That's an ideal. And many congregations experience that part of it. So you'll have a community vote. You've done some of that already in making some statements about who you will call as a rostered minister and having weddings in the building. But there is still a welcome statement to review and approve at some point. I don't know if that's in the end of fall or if it's spring of 2026. But and the ministry is lifelong, because once you become RIC, then it's about, okay, well, we got to remember every June we got to do something at Pride, or maybe in October during LGBT History Month, we have something. We look back at the history of Stonewall or something like that. This is the table of contents. It's tiny. You can't read it from where you're sitting. Don't worry. I'll break it down for you. But if you're ever curious and you have a copy of that on your computer, or you have a paper copy, you can that is the whole journey laid out, and the six tools that we have developed to help you with that journey. These are the commitment we ask you to honor as a Reconciling Christ member. Starting at the bottom, make a meaningful contribution. Rob can certainly set up a meeting and have me explain what meaningful means, and what he or you will hear me say is, well, what's meaningful to you? When you give to outside organizations, not your own ministries, generally what do? Do you have like a 5%? Whatever. What is meaningful to you as you think about supporting the work of a ministry like this? I get asked that question, but we don't have a formula. You don't have to calculate, it's like $1 per member, whatever. It can be as little as $25, or as much as 5,000. No, each RIC partner establishes its own meaningful contribution. Use the space. This is something you've already made clear. You've already made this commitment. The second one you've also already made, that you're open to calling someone to serve you who is black or brown or indigenous, Asian, or who is a part of the LGBT community. You've already made that commitment. So the middle two you've already done. And then the top one is part of the welcome statement. Clearly state a welcome to people with any sexuality, with all gender identities and all gender expressions. So that language needs to be in there, or you can go to LGBTQIA+. Some congregations use the acronym, some use those keywords, but those words need to be in there. And the ideal is for the racial equity or anti-racism piece, that language to also be in your welcome statement. But a lot of congregations, I would say maybe a quarter to a third of them, for some of them, that anti-racism work was already in place, and so they're not going to move that into their welcome statement. They're going to leave it where it is and maybe do a different page where they talk about all of the justice things that are part of this community's identity. And I also learned, and so this could be something you explore here in this congregation. In the Canadian church, they talk about white supremacy more than they talk about anti-racism, because what they want to be able to do is work with reconciliation and reparations with First Nations. Because white supremacy is the umbrella term for describing what happened when white people showed up on this continent, bringing black people over as slaves, but then also committing genocide against the people who already lived here so that we could have their land and use it for our own purposes. Okay, so those are the commitments we ask you to honor. These steps have already been done. This is what your task team has been doing since you began work last summer. Figuring out how to lead the journey, gathering information, doing research, building relationships with each other so they can have a support network, and then mapping out how to do it. And I want to say that Rob, as a scientist, I'm calling him out, you can blush, this congregation has been very faithful to following the steps the way we think is ideal. Not every congregation chooses to do that. It's like, oh, we don't have to do that step. We can skip that. We know everybody here. Not a good idea sometimes. And then these are the next 8 steps. And from what I can tell, this is where you are right now. You are in step 6. And so you'll have some time for education. And as these things are happening, the task team is going to begin working on the drafts of a welcome statement, which they will share with you at some point, and you'll have a chance to provide some perspectives on that, to give some feedback on that draft statement. And they will be guiding that. We do have suggestions on how to do that, but really the task team will be in charge. And then there's 9, holding the vote. And then there's 10, part 1, which is celebration. I split this up this way. The book does not, the toolkit does not. And part 2, publicizing, because it might take a while to publicize. And sometimes step 9 and step 10, part 1 happen on the same day. It's like you vote, and then you go out. I've heard more than one congregation, you go out and the rainbow cake is already there, got balloons, and you have a big party and celebrate. But there's also publicizing on your website. Make sure that everyone who comes into this building knows, or who looks for your congregation online knows. 11 is living into the identity. I sometimes will suggest that you have the infinity symbol connected to this, because step 11, you never get to the end. There is no step 12. There's just step 11, step 11, step 11, step 11, step 11, step 11, on and on and on. Because there's always new ways, new people, new things you can learn. And it's also known as we're officially welcoming. Now what do we do? The tools, there are 6 of them. Most of those, the ones that are displayed, these are the ones that your team used to develop the journey that got you to this point. And I don't know if you have done a sexuality, gender identity, and gender expression workshop yet. That might be on the agenda to bring someone in to do that. There is a university here, or they may still have a Pride Center or faculty who could come and do a basic primer on what is all of this stuff. We have materials of our own that you can look at, and it's in the toolkit. So someone from the congregation could also lead this yourselves. You could do it internally. And then there's scriptural engagement, which has happened. I think there has been a book discussion on something. You also watched the documentary 1946. That's scriptural engagement. So those are the 6 tools. Again, they're in the toolkit. Download it for free, and you can look them over. We also think about this work as you get into step 11 as intersectional. And so part of your RIC identity is if you see that there's a way for you to do ministry and serve and welcome people who are neurodiverse, that's part of it. That's a form of opening the church to people who have felt excluded. I'm neurodiverse on the autistic side. I'm quiet. I don't get in trouble very often unless I get restless and bored because I've done all the homework, and so go to the library, David. Just go to the library. But there are others who are a different form of neurodiversity that how do you react when they suddenly freak out because someone touched them? And so there's a whole bunch of different ways to think about justice as intersectional, dealing with identities, multiple identities. I have samples of our booklets out there. I also have some books that most of those have been curated by us, and so you can get a sense of, here are some resources you could use. There might be some that you have used already. There might be some new ones that you could think about, take a picture of. You can buy these little booklets that are on the left side of the screen there off of the website from our e-store. I did supply you with a set of 5, so Rob has them. You can check with him about whether you want to borrow one. They're like $2 or something, except for the one that's about the Bible. That one's like $8.